Hi everyone, hope you all are doing well. My name is Ratika Prasad and I welcome all of you to the Growth Sutra in 30-minute session. So this is the third session we are having on qualifying leads. Just in case you have missed our two past session on qualifying leads, which was is it magic or is it science and financial nuts and bolts, you can visit our YouTube channel and you can watch the on-demand video over there. So before we start our session, I request all the participants as you are joining our session, please introduce yourself by mentioning your name and your location in the chat window. Also, if you have any query or any question, you can put that in the chat window. We'll try to answer that soon. So, without any further ado, let's begin our session. Over to you, Vishwendra.
Thank you, Ritika. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We are having while we on the qualifying leads, we are going to have the third session today. But in terms of the monthly uh, Growth Sutra sessions, I think this is the sixth session which we are having, six or seven session which we are having, and we are going to continue this momentum for throughout the year. Every Thursday, third Thursday of a month, we are going to have a session, and we are going to bring some of the most relevant and industry best topics for you, so that you can gain insights and leverage those insights for your for your business pursuits. Okay, so we are going to start the session, and this time the session title is Framework for Pursuit. Let me share my screen so that you can see um, all the slides. Um, yes, in the meantime, let me also introduce uh, Dennis, who has been uh, a partner in crime for these sessions. Dennis, do you want to talk about the sessions which we had, the momentum which we had for last couple of months?
I'm glad to, Vish. As a matter of fact, you're right. This is our seventh webinar. So literally, we've been doing this now for 7 months, and I'm actually happy to report that every month we have a webinar, more people are registered. We have the highest registration this time than we've ever had, which is wonderful.
Exactly.
So we've had 7 sessions, and the last few have all been on qualifying leads. Is it magic or science? Financial aspects, the financial nuts and bolts of qualifying leads. And now we're on number 3, frameworks for pursuit. Back to you, Vish.
Thank you. So quickly, a quick intros about the speakers. Dennis is the founder of Romans Numbers, and he's a senior advisor to Growth Sutra. Technology product and platform companies gain immense benefits from his data-driven approach to building marketing communication programs that deliver value across the sales funnel. He's based in Florida, US. About me, I founded Growth Sutra that craft insights, execute programs, and enable growth for emerging enterprises as on-demand CMO on their side. I have more than 23 years of experience in building brands, informs, and convince and gain customer. Um, I'm based in Gurgaon. While we talked about the 2 sessions on qualifying leads, what is also important for you to understand that qualifying leads as a topic has been we have received a lot of positive feedback, and we felt that this is a topic which could actually cut across various functions, and especially for startups business owners, it's important for them to understand that prospecting or sales is not a guessing game. There's a lot of science which is involved. And in fact, in the last 2 sessions, we have debated and deliberated on some of the topics which Dennis did talk about. But some of the learnings which we had is effective prospecting is key to sales success. So the first step to sales success starts with effective prospecting. Qualifying leads is not a guesswork. And third is, we have also leveraged Wall Street concepts to pre-qualify leads, which you might have seen in the session which we had on financial nuts and bolts. So Dennis, over to you.
Okay. Well, this third part, I think, is going to be very interesting for our audience. It's one that I feel is an underdeveloped muscle that many of our, myself included, an undeveloped muscle or an underutilized opportunity to go after the marketplace. And in this third webinar, we're discussing frameworks, because there's a variety of frameworks, and they all more or less begin at approximately the same point. But my take on this, which is we're ready to go into, Vish, is somewhat different. So let's go into part 3. Okay, now I won't test the audience, because I can't imagine there's anybody running around today who doesn't understand or doesn't know what this is. They actually know the name of it, and they know what it is, and almost invariably at some point they've had it in their hand. Okay, so we know what it is. We're extremely familiar with it. It's a brand in and of itself. That's how well known it is and how ubiquitous it is. Okay, great. Next slide. But we never thought of it this way. This is also what that was a moment ago. Before there was a picture on the left, there was a picture on the right. That picture on the right is basically how you break down the picture on the left. All right, that may not be news to anyone, but it was news to me. The first time I saw that, I went, oh yeah, that's what this is. And for anybody who knows me, I find the simplest things in life to be sometimes the most interesting. And this was one of them. Okay, so let's go to the next one, Vish. And this is kind of where I get on the elevator. So if you could cut these 6 frames into a discrete element about deal qualification and opportunity qualification, there are market sectors and segments. If you're calling on a company, it exists in some market sector and in some segment. I mean, that's the way it is. There are no companies that you would be in pursuit of that isn't in a market sector and a segment. We could talk about that on another webinar. And there are then actual target companies you're going after, the blue bits. Okay, fine. Then there are the equity analysts, the people in the world who are paid to understand and report on these companies from their financial perspective. Then there are your offerings. Okay, you got stuff, you got services. That's an entire frame on its own. And then there are the industry analysts. Unlike the equity analysts who cover the financials on these companies, the equity analysts cover the competitiveness of these companies, if you will, the Gartners and the Sell-It. As a matter of fact, these people also cover the vendor community, not as a public company, but as a vendor, as good as bad as their offerings might be. And the analysts, the industry analysts, also cover the tech firms' competitors. So there's 6 different movable parts right there. And this is not, we haven't even got to the framework yet, right? This is just one way of looking at your customer. A lot of perspectives. These are like facets on a diamond. Okay, Vish, let's go. Now, here's a guy, and Vish and I were both, and Ritika, we talked about this. Does anybody know who this is? Anyone want to type in the chat? Who is this guy? Now, this is not a trick question. This is somebody whose products we use constantly in our work. Anybody know who he is? Anyone? Probably not. I didn't know who he was either. I just took the time to find out who he was. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is a guy. That's right. He's the English mathematician. I call him Sven Venn. Now, actually, that's not his name. His real name is John Venn. But I like to call him Sven Venn. Now, with that hint, who knows what next slide is coming next? What slide is coming up next? Now that we're talking about John Venn. Venn? Does Venn mean anything? Let's go. What's the next slide? You're right. Here's a Venn diagram. Do we all, right, we've been riddled with a Venn diagram. Why? It's so good at what it does. It's such a wonderful way of looking at a subject. And we've been socialized, and this is not the only thing the poor guy invented, but we've been socialized to look at this, and we're looking for the overlap between the three circles. That's a good thing to do. And however we define the three circles, the problem is to find the star, the overlap in the three circles. But I submit there's a subtext to this, and let's go, Vish, to the next one. The subtext is even a twofer is good. Maybe not as good as a threefer. So by that I mean the first and second set share number 32. So I'm saying each of the three sets on two boundaries, each of them share a common element. So it's not 3 out of 3. This is just 2 out of 2. It's just to introduce the idea how many moving parts, like on a Rubik's Cube. And we saw Sven Ben's 3-dimensional circle, but we all know as seasoned sales and marketing types, there's like a dozen circles. They're floating around independent, and we're trying to get them to, and we're looking and we're trying. Okay. Next slide, Vish. Okay. And so this is where I come in. And Vish asked me to prepare this. And my shtick, my thing, the why I exist, is for what I've called the RGB Prequel. This is the prequel, if you will, to traditional lead qualification frameworks, which Vish is going to take us through in a minute. Okay, the RGB I just picked so somebody could remember it easily. Red, green, blue. Keep going. Build on the slide, Vish, for me. Okay, the continuum is wide and multifaceted. At the macro level, what's the state of the economy, the region, the country, the stock market sectors? That's the macro. On the green level, the mid-level, thank you. The mid-level, the stock market industries, the individual companies, the select lines of business. And then as we drop down one more level, on the micro level, the business department, the job title, and the actual person in charge. Now, this thing represents 10 circles, 10 moving circles, if you will. And my expertise is on the first 9. I can't help you much with the guy or gal you're actually calling on at some bank or some manufacturing company, but I can help you with all the 9 that precede that. And for sales, the intent is to influence the funnel towards more successful outcomes by qualifying the first 9. And for marketing, to be able to buddy up with sales to craft more business relevant messaging and separate their firm from the competitors. So this is why I call it the prequel. And this is the undeveloped muscle. This is not being utilized at the level and the precision and the professionalism that it could be by many, many, many sales teams. The prequel. Okay, Vish, I'm done with the prequel. Over to you.
Thank you, Dennis. So before we move to the next session, I'm going to start with a question. How do you currently prioritize leads for pursuit? Is this based on their industry and company size, your prospect's industry and company size? Is it by assessing their budget and financial capacity? Is it considering their timeline and sense of urgency? Any other parameter which you use and you like to share with us? So if you could share in the chat window the option which you think is more appropriate for this question, that will be great. I think it's taking time for the audience to type in, and we can see their responses on the monitor. Okay, so this actually there's no a single response to this question. It's a evolving is the evolution which sales team goes through as they learn the qualification process more, as they get an expertise on the qualification process, the more complexity adds in their how they prioritize their leads for pursuit. But I'm going to delve into some of these aspects when I'll be talking about frameworks for pursuit, wherein I'll talk about some of the frameworks which are being used at a level which are where you don't have very high engagement. Okay, so there's another question, which is at what buyer's journey stage should you apply a lead qualification framework? You are familiar with buyer's journey and the various stages which are involved. So, which stage do you think you should apply a lead qualification framework? Whether it's an awareness stage, it's a consideration stage, or decision stage? Any responses from the audience? If not, I'm going to move to the next slide. And actually, to respond to this question, this is there's not a single stage which can be identified in buyer's journey where you can apply a lead qualification framework. It's a process which is a continuous process. So if you look at my next slide, that actually talks about the lead qualification process, which is a continuous marketing and sales process. And what we did is we plotted this qualification, various level of qualification across this chart on deal complexity and cost of sales. You might be familiar with the deal complexity and cost of sales, and you might have seen this in your organization. When you get the inbound or outbound lead, the first qualification is mostly in terms of checking the alignment of that lead with your target audience, with your target ideal customer profile. And this qualification is mostly at an organization level. The second level of qualification is when you check on the product, solution, services fit, where you try to understand whether the our solution or product or services fits with that organization needs or requirements. The third level is where you also try to assess the opportunity level, either in terms of the deal size, either in terms of the revenue target which you can meet, what sales incentives that you can get, is there going to be a future growth with this opportunity. So this is where you also do some more qualification. Then you also do some qualification from a CRM perspective. You're using a CRM automation tool. You have to qualify these leads as per the frameworks which have been there in the CRM, which has been defined in your CRM. The next level is when you start assessing the competition, how the competition are positioned in this specific opportunity. Do you have the competition battle cards? Do you have a competition insights so that you can maneuver or navigate through that opportunity? The next level of qualification is when you have a stakeholder level qualification, wherein you try to figure out who is the mobilizer, who is your champion, who can talk about your product or solution with the organization. B2B sales is a complex sales engagement, and you do not have a single person who can make a decision or who can sponsor your sales. So it's very important that you have a clarity in terms of the various stakeholders who are going to be involved with this opportunity. And that's where you try to assess the mobilizer, decision maker, sponsor, and then you move to the next level, which is where you start trying to get a buy-in. So first buy-ins from your internal management, wherein you're trying to get your resources aligned. The second level of buy-in is with the prospect management. So here also you do a qualification which can convince the prospect management to buy from you. Then you manage objections and you close the sales. Now, this journey is not linear. This journey may also differ from organization to organization. You may probably close a sales at the product solution service fit. You can probably close a sales when you are at a stakeholder level mapping. So this may differ actually, in terms of the product, as you add the product complexity, or even you add the cost of sales. If you look at the, if we map it with the sales, then normally at the tail end of this arrow, you would see more of a digital sales, wherein the in-person engagement is less. But as you move across, as you move up, you would see more of a consultative or value-based sales which is happening. So it also, when the deal is complex, it's also important for you to consider various parameters, various elements of the opportunity before you can make a sale. Okay, I'll move to the question. I hope the previous slide would have made sense, and you could actually assess. You might see it familiar as per your organization or the sales and marketing which you pursue in your organization. But what is also important is, how about if there's a prospect which is not meeting any of your qualification criteria? So how do you handle those leads that don't meet your qualification criteria but show potential? So what do you do? What is your behavior for these kind of leads? Do you immediately deprioritize them? Do you remove them from your sales funnel or pipeline? Do you engage them in a further nurturing and exploration? Do you seek additional information to assess their suitability? Do you leave them undecided until more information is available? So I'll appreciate if you could share your response, A, B, C, or D, in the chat window, to see if, how do you normally tackle that kind of situation where the lead is not meeting your qualification criteria. While we are waiting for the audience to respond, Dennis, do you have any comments here?
Well, Vish, I'm probably speaking for some of our audience, because there's probably going to be a mixed set of answers on this one. We're chasing, if you will, the Holy Grail. One might suggest that the choices that the audience has here presupposes that almost every company needs something from this vendor, if you get my drift, which we know may or may not be true. But I like the spirit of the question, because I was taught by somebody very intelligent. He said to me, Dennis, selling starts when the customer says no. That's when selling actually starts. Up until that point, you're just taking orders, right? It's when the customer says no is when you have to up your game. You're not going to win them all, but you can win more than we're winning now, I think.
Exactly. So we have got few responses, and Esther has actually picked D, leave them undecided until more information is available. I think that's generally what I have seen, in my previous, previous lives, especially with sales team. Yeah, these are actually left undecided most of the time, because we have lack of information on these prospects, and they are not meeting our qualification criteria. And then we want to prioritize our resources on other prospects, which are of more importance for us, where we have more information. Okay, I'm going to move to the famous frameworks, which is what this session is all about. You are familiar with the kind of leads which are being generated. But all these leads need a filtering process, and this filtering process comes from the lead qualification frameworks, and there are hundreds of these lead qualification frameworks. What Dennis shared is a prequel to the lead qualification framework. In fact, one of the qualification framework which I'm going to refer to, it also talks about how you can leverage information from prequel to make inroads in certain opportunities. So the one in blue is what I'm going to be covering today, and the one in gray, I've left it for another session. And the overall flow of the once the lead is qualified, it is termed as a qualified lead. Then you pursue it on the basis of cold, warm, and hot, and then it's sales. Disqualified leads are either disqualified completely, they are removed from the pipeline, or if there is a lead potential, then these are nurtured over a period of time. All right, I'll move to the lead qualification frameworks now. Um, and BANT is the most well-known lead qualification framework. It was developed by IBM in 1950s as a means to efficiently train new sales representatives. In fact, these are some of the very basic elements which are very important for the qualification. And I've seen mostly the inside sales team, or new sales representatives, or even the SDR. They use BANT a lot. So let's quickly go through what BANT is all about. BANT is budget, authority, need, and time. These are normally used by software and IT companies. This is low on sales and marketing resources. There's low level of engagement with the prospect. The focus is not relationship building, but it's easy to remember, and you can have faster lead qualification. Of course, the cons are that it's seen as a seller focused. If there's no budget or commitment, either in terms of timelines or in terms of the funds, then the leads can get qualified, which can be a downside to this framework. The next framework is CHAMP. CHAMP was it's an advanced version of BANT. However, in CHAMP, there are two important elements which have been added. One is the challenges, and second is the priority. What is important here is to get a perspective from the prospect, to understand the prospect better. What are the obstacles which the prospect is facing, and and your solution is fitting enough to solve those challenges? So it's very important that we start this lead qualification by understanding the prospect challenges. Then we understand the authority, money, if the lead has enough money to spend, if they can afford your product. And lastly is the priority, whether this pain point or this challenge is a priority for the prospect to solve as compared to other priorities which they might have. So this model is probably more in line with the sales process at startups and SaaS-based companies. So the key takeaways with this process is there's the understanding of the prospect is key. You can play a long game. It can be easily integrated with your sales and BD strategy, and it allows you to or it allows the lead to share their problems and allows you to understand the prospect challenges and the problems which they are facing and how your product can solve that. While organizations that don't know their customers can't use this this framework, and if there's no budget or time commitment, leads again gets qualified here. Faint is the framework that has been developed by the Rain Group. That's again after having the analysis on BANT and other frameworks which are there in the market, Rain Group recommended Faint as the framework. And this actually talks about fund, authority, interest, need, and time. So here, Rain Group also introduced interest, which is important to understand whether the buyer is interested in your product or whether you are able to generate that interest which is needed for them to buy from you. This is also important, and this is what I referred earlier when Dennis talked about Prequel. So when your marketing team or sales team, they have put together target addressable market and define your ideal customer profile, you can probably use Faint to generate interest. You can start educating those target groups about the products and services that you can offer them. And while you are doing that process, you can also understand whether they have the funds, whether you are approaching the right target audience. Are they the decision makers? What is their need, and what is the time which they have? When is the prospect planning to buy? This is normally used. This actually in historically it's been used in e-commerce and other online industry, and the reason being most of the buying there is unplanned. However, the this framework actually turn leads into prospects faster. You can utilize your resources and time effectively, because there's also an education process which is inbuilt as part of this framework. And yeah, I talked about this when the buyer has huge funds and they can make and they are making unplanned purchases. So that's where this framework would go well. If the offering can't solve the leads problem, interest may fail. So you have to be cautious. You need to qualify the lead accordingly. And again, if there's no money or time commitment, leads get qualified by this framework again. Moving to the next one, this is MEDDIC. MEDDIC was created in the early 90s by Parametric Technology Corporation, now a SaaS company. And you can look at the framework. This is very complex framework. This actually started with matrix. Assessing what is the matrix, how much money will your product save the prospect, identifying the economic buyer, what is the decision criteria, what is the decision process that is followed in your prospect organization, identifying pain, what are their pain points, discovering the champion who can talk about your products within the organization, and then also assessing competition. Who are the competition involved in this with this prospect or with this opportunity? Later on, there are more additions to MEDDIC. There's more elements that has been added. The first element was the paper process. So especially organizations or sales and marketing leaders who are in enterprise sales, they would understand that there's a lot of paper process which is also involved, either in terms of contractual, legal, or vendor onboarding process. So this framework also takes into consideration paper process, and then they've also added two more elements to it, which is the relative priority. What other projects are competing for funds and attention, and what are the risk factors in case if the customer change their decision or priorities. So this is normally used in by large B2B enterprises where there's a long sales cycle, and it's normally used in machinery or a software company. The key areas where this framework is going to work is when your prospect is going through transformation, or they are changing company processes from paper to Excel to CRM. That's just an example. But with the help of this framework, you can build a more accurate right leads, and you can also position high price products with this framework. While the downside is there's a huge amount of time which is needed on the research and the detective work. And to collate all this information, you need a CRM, you need a sales automation tool which can manage a lot of this data. The last one is the GPCT BACI or GPCT. This was developed by the HubSpot. And there are three phases to this framework. The first phase talks about goals, plans, challenges, and timing. The second phase, it talks about the budget and authority. And the third phase is it refers to the negative consequences and positive implications. So you would understand from the previous slides, the different elements in terms of budget, authority, timing, team, challenges. But here, HubSpot also added goals and their plans, which are also important in the initial phase to understand whether this opportunity, whether this prospecting aligns with the prospect goals or not, and what are their plans, what is their roadmap, is their plan for the organization, how you can fit in with the entire scheme of things. Negative consequences and positive implication also get you better insights, and that can also help you build longer relationship with your client. So sales and BD can adopt it faster Prospects will be more satisfied with your service if you tailor it to their goals and needs. This is appropriate for growing businesses, startups, and SMB primarily. There's a complexity which is involved primarily in terms of qualification process, as you require more resources. So if your team is very small, that much of bandwidth which is needed to collect information might be difficult. If you have large number of prospects to qualify, then again this might be very difficult for you to manage. So yeah, that's the last framework which I have thought would cover this. If we put together, if you look at the chart which I shared earlier, and if we plot these frameworks, you would see, the more strategy focus that you're going to have as part of frameworks, the better is going to be for you in terms of, um, uh, you know, in terms of creating a opportunity potential for your organization. And of course, since there's a complexity involved, at the fourth quadrant, the fourth right quadrant, top quadrant, that's where there's more consultative or value-based sales which you would see, and that's where you would see more of a MEDDIC or GPT based frameworks. In fact, many organizations have their own custom frameworks as well, which aligns with their system, which aligns with their management style. Um, Okay, I'll now pause here and then we'll move to the next slide, which is a question for you. How often do you review and update your lead qualification criteria and frameworks? Um, it's important when I talked about the lead qualification as a continuous process. It is also important that the you are reviewing your qualification frameworks in a periodic manner. But we have seen not that many sales and marketing leaders or business owners have put together their bandwidth in terms of assessing their lead qualification framework. So, but you can counter our opinion. You can share how frequently you review and update your lead qualification criteria, whether it's quarterly, whether it's annually, as needed, or based on industry changes, or we don't have a set schedule for review and update. Okay, while we are waiting for the responses, Dennis, do you have any comments?
I do. Thanks, Vish. This is very helpful. Certainly, even for myself as well. Um, I'm going to make the pitch on why we need frameworks very, very succinctly. My avocation is the stock market. I study stocks constantly, and I love the stock market, even though it's volatile and it makes me pull my hair out. And I've made money and I've lost money. But the point I'd like to come to is I use a framework to decide on what stocks to buy or sell. Now, that may seem self evident, but why I'm making it so emphatic is if I start studying stocks randomly without a framework, I get pulled off in this direction and I get influenced by something that I probably shouldn't be influenced by because I'm not following a framework. So a framework gives me the discipline to stay in my lane and rely on my past experience and history. How does that relate to our conversation today? Same criteria. If you're going to study a bank and you go off this way, fine. But if you study another bank, you better go off in the same direction, or else what you're doing is random and you'll never get to an institutionalized process, which is my second point. We're trying to
Yeah.
get sales teams to more effectively rule in and rule out likely opportunities to get better and faster and more streamlined. And the only way to do that is to have a process, a framework, however flawed it might be. Make sure you're using at least one of them and continuously, as this slide asks, refresh it, and make it better. That's my remark.
Thanks, Dennis. So we have got some responses, and Esther again responded saying D. Yeah, I think so yeah, this is this is what our observation as well. So there's not a set schedule for review and update. But I think this in a periodic manner, this can be done, this can be updated. And I'll move to the next question, which will actually set the context why you should be updating your lead qualification criteria. So how do you judge your lead qualification effectiveness? What metrics do you consider most important in assessing lead qualification effectiveness? Is this the conversion rate from qualified leads to customer? Is this time to close a qualified lead? Is average deal size of a qualified lead? Or customer lifetime value of qualified leads? So which one do you think is the right matrix for you to assess a lead qualification effectiveness? Okay, I think um, this is certainly not. I mean, as per my observation, I have not seen a kind of matrix on the lead qualification effectiveness. What is normally seen are the conversion rate, and this conversion rate is primarily applicable to the entire, sales marketing campaigns, management, processes. But yeah, it's also important that we have a matrix for a lead qualification effectiveness. Um, um, so Dennis, do you have any recommendation here? Which one would you pick or you recommend as a matrix for a deal qualification, lead qualification framework?
Well, the bigger the size of an opportunity, the longer the sales cycle is going to be. That's the unfortunate seesaw. You got to take more risk and spend more time to win a bigger deal. My thing, Vish,
Absolutely.
is I think is everybody on the call, everybody who's in sales has been doing the same thing and often think if they work harder, they'll get better results. It's not working harder. I know this sounds trite, but it's working smarter. And my perfect example is always this one. If you could learn from the prequel which customers, potential customers, are sitting on stacks of money that they haven't spent and they need to spend on something and find them, that would be a perfect example of how you narrow the funnel at the top and increase your odds. There's a lot of targets that salespeople call on that are broke. I'm not saying you can't win any money from a client who's broke, but why not go after the clients that are rich? And rich is a field that's buried in the financial statements. That's just a working example. Thanks, Fish.
Thank you, Dennis. That actually makes a lot of sense. The prequel of the lead qualification process is very important. Okay. I think there's a question from Raja. He's asking, what is Note? So Note is again a framework. In fact, I talked about various frameworks in my previous slide, but Note actually stands for Need, Opportunity, Team, and Effectiveness. So there's a lot of focus on the team and effectiveness as part of that framework. Yeah, so I believe I answered Raja's question here. But we can, if there are more questions on the frameworks, you can share with us, and we can probably, put together a session on each of these frameworks and can take you through and share our insights. Um, However, considering the fact that we are already on top of the hour, so we have to quickly wrap it up. I also did a framework comparison here, primarily for you to understand, which framework could be suitable for your pursuits in terms of your sales and marketing, processes or efforts which you are putting in. So, what framework? I mean, you can refer on the basis of your ecosystem, on the basis of your operating environment, the prospects which you are targeting, the size of the prospect, the engagement type. You can work out. You can choose the right framework. You can apply that framework, and you can share with us your feedback in terms of how these frameworks have worked for you. Um, what is also important for these frameworks is this also aligns with the sales focus. And when I talk about sales focus, is where it comes from the perspective the sales uh, persona or sales environment that you have in the organization. So some of the framework, these are more seller focused. Like for instance, BANT is more seller focused. Faint is more educative, more buyer centric. MEDDIC is again is more consultative selling. GPCT is again value selling. So it all goes in your sales DNA. What kind of sales DNA that you have as a person or within the organization, and that's an interesting area to talk about, to go further deep in terms of understanding that sales persona. So in fact, the next session which we are planning is on qualifying leads. It's about you and not them. So we are going to talk about sales persona, how you can improve with the help of various frameworks, strategies, expertise, insights. You can improve your sorry, you can improve your sales persona, your sales style, and can aim for a higher sales success. However, I take a pause. Dennis, do you have anything to share here from the perspective of next session?
Well, I think this is a very intriguing approach, Vish, because generally we always think that the qualifying of leads and deals and opportunities is all about the outside world. What is that company like? What are their needs? That's all valid. Seldom do we think about, well, if it's that kind of a company, who on the sales team should I send over there to work on that? And that's what we're going to be talking about. What are you like? That's almost as important as what are they like. So I'm really looking forward to this one next month.
Yeah. So in fact, this is there on LinkedIn. You can, I will share the link of the session with you, and you can register for this session. Block your calendar, and we look forward to you seeing you in the next session. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or comments for this session on or any of the frameworks that we talked about, do share with us, and we'll be happy to to seek your feedback or comments. And if you have any other topic which you think could be appropriate for us to talk about in our subsequent sessions, do share that as well with us, so that we can consider them when we would be putting together our the content framework for our next sessions. But thank you so much for this engaging and interactive session. We had a lot of interactions and a lot of insights, a lot of engagement via chat. Unfortunately, there's a bottleneck that we can't allow. We are not able, and this platform doesn't allow people to come on board and share their session. But we have a practitioner report which we didn't include this time. But if you are keen, you want to be part of that practitioner report, do share your request with us, and we'll add you as part of the practitioner report in our next session. Thank you so much, and take care.
Thank you, Vish. Thank you, Ritika.
Thank you, Dennis. So as the last slide, these are our email email credentials. You can share your comments, feedback, and um, comments to our email IDs, dennis@romansummers.com and Vishwendra@growthsutra.com. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Ritika.